So this is my talk on why St. John's is important to me. I'm going to keep it simple, and it's going to be short. It's going to be about 25 minutes. So when Father Matt asked me to speak about St. John's, I was honored, and I didn't know where to even start. So when I talk about St. John's today, it's going to mean not just St. John's. It means God, Jesus, spirituality, our priests at St. John's, the people here, the family we've become here, the love here, and the actual building. So where do I start? So I'll start from the beginning. I started here when I was 2. So what's that, about 27 years ago? Now, about 40 years ago, I started here. I started coming here. And I don't really remember ever not being here. My first memory here was trying to sing. I was too little. I couldn't read. So I couldn't read the hymnal. But I remember just singing sounds out and pretending I was singing like everybody else. So I looked cool, but I was dying to be an acolyte. My older brothers and my older sister were acolytes, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. So during the summer, there weren't a lot of kids around. Everybody was on vacation. And my sister and brothers, I think, were acolyting that day. And I said, oh, I'll do it. You know, they were missing one. So I'm like, I'll be an acolyte, I'll be an acolyte. And I begged. And Father responded and said, okay, I can be an acolyte. But it was probably about 95 degrees out. And then you had to put on the robes. And it was so hot in church. And back then, the kids didn't sit. You stood. From the moment you got up, you stood at the altar. And then, remember, Jen? And then you would stand at the altar, and then when the procession came back down, that's when you'd come back down, and you'd finally sit. So hot, and I was so excited. So I was standing at the altar, and all of a sudden, I just started swaying like this. And I was moving, the flame is going, and I see David Tate. He was up there, and he's looking at me. And I'm like, and I'm going, I was passing out. And the next thing I knew, Joan Morgan was wiping me down with a cold cloth. I was on a couch in Father Eric's office. I had passed out cold, and that was my first acolyte experience. Anyway, it didn't deter me. I was an acolyte until I graduated, and it was great fun. I remember having my crew here. There was tons of kids here. Jen and Jenny and Bobby Ransom, David Martin, Chris Ayers, Morgan Davis, Rhonda and Rosalind were here, and Kent Chesney, Sherry Roberts. That was our little age group, and we had so much fun. But we were gabby. So when we were up there acolyting, Father Ayers, we didn't have back then. We didn't get the noisy cheap seats back then. Kids were very quiet. We didn't talk, and we were up there. Father Ayers stopped the service to turn to us to yell at us, and then carried on with the service. And we were yelled at after church in his office. Still didn't deter me from being an acolyte. I still loved it. I was in the junior choir and the youth group acolytes. I remember going to acolyte festivals, and we used to have pageants here, full-on pageants. And I remember finally being married. It took me years to get to be married, and that was one of the happiest memories here, too. I was also supposed to be married when Aiden was born. He was born in October, and then Carrie had EJ, so I was knocked out of the running, so that's okay. I got over it. I remember my mother started working on weekends, so my parents stopped coming for a while, but people stepped up to help me still get to church. The Ransoms practically adopted me, and would get me to all my practices and stuff, and it was really a nice time. I remember every year going into the church fair, trying to buy Hazel Muller's, all of her artwork. Back then, it was fun. I received my first Holy Communion here, and I was confirmed here. And what I remember most about being here is just my foundation. That's basically what this talk is about. It's my foundation. As a child, I knew I was loved by my family and friends here. But one of the most important things I learned is that I wasn't the center of the universe. When you're a kid and you come to a church like this, you learn that there's something more important than you, and that's God. I think sometimes kids don't always get that message. I think it's one of the most important things we can teach our children. I graduated and went to college, and I forgot to come back for a little while, a few years. But when I was away, I had this fundamental knowledge of right and wrong that I learned growing up here. And, you know, when you had to make decisions, it was good to have Jesus on your side. I didn't always make the right decisions. I made a lot of mistakes. But I didn't make terrible, horrible decisions that I couldn't come back from. My foundation. I was married here, and my kids have been raised here. They've all been baptized here. And Oliver has his confirmation here. I'm on committees here, and I like to teach Sunday school. It's my joy, and I really love doing it. I've watched my children grow up and develop relationships with God here. I love it. I love being here. So my foundation, I love St. John's. I'm proud of St. John's. When people come to visit, or my friends come to an activity, or, you know, they're always saying how wonderful we are, and I'm very proud of that. Until tragedy struck my family, I didn't know how much I needed St. John's. Almost 5 years ago, my niece was killed in a car accident. And most of you know that. But the shock of losing someone, I mean, you don't know what to do immediately. You're sad, terror, despair, desolation, you know. So, in one moment, though, I think if you have this foundation, you can see God, you know, can help you. So when it happened, it was utter chaos. But something came through clearly, called Father Matt. So I won't really get into it because I can't really talk about that. Or a year later, when her mother died, it was my brother and my nephew needed me. But thank God I had foundation, God's strength to get through an awful time. So we ask why? Why does it happen? Why them? Why? And you don't know. The only thing I can think of is somehow, if you can, turn something awful into something positive. And I always say, what could possibly have come from that awful, awful time? And I try to explain to people, I'm like, you get this gift, this awful, terrible gift. You didn't want it, you never asked for it. And it's this gift of clarity. And peace. It's almost like a film. It's lifted from your eyes and your heart. And you can see things clearly for the first time. That's the only thing I think of. But you wouldn't even be able to appreciate that if you didn't have that initial foundation of love and God and Jesus. Sorry. I did better than last week, though, right? I don't think anybody can understand what I was saying last week. So back to my foundation. It comes back to me being a kid here, growing up here. The lessons I learned, the love I felt, my trust in God. I don't know what people do if they don't have that. How do you get through awful times? How do you even wrap your brain around it? So I would like that to continue here for our kids and for all the children who will continue to come here someday. Our little disciples we're going to send out into the world. Let's give them a foundation like ours.